Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for hour number 3, we're on KFOR in Lincoln. Woohoo! Our guests, though, they're always joined via the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. You know, we were talking a little bit over the break how my guy Andrew Rogers needs to go place some NHL bets, getting some inside info from our guy Jordan, who we just talked to. You can go place those in Omaha now at Horseman's Park.
And he gave us a little tease.
He gave a little bit of
so
a
you
tease.
should add that in after this read.
6303 Q Street is where Horseman's Park is located. That's where you can find the Warhorse Sportsbook in Omaha. In Lincoln, you can go to the Warhorse Casino, and the Warhorse Sportsbook is there. Make sure you go in person in Omaha or Lincoln to place your bets on pretty much any major sporting event that you can think of. Whatever type of bet you want to play, straight bet, parlay, prop, in-game is my little sweet spot that I like. You can place all those at the Warhorse Sportsbook. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for full house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. A guy who's very familiar with glory is our guy, Mike Schaefer. He is our friend from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, it looks like you trimmed the beard up a little bit today. We going a little bit closer for winter?
Yeah, a little bit that. I was in a wedding on Friday, and then you're a heavily bearded fellow. You would understand this. When the weather starts to turn in Nebraska, it gets so dry.
Mm-hmm. I totally
face
get it.
just like dries out entirely.
Yeah, I'm with you. Totally understand what you guys are talking about.
Definitely looks like it.
It's not like I have frustration like Coach Rule or anything when maybe replay doesn't do its job, or I'm gonna pinpoint the Michigan scandal again. Question, because I asked Ravi this during a break, and we haven't really gotten into it too much yet. So it's a great start with you. Have you ever seen Coach Rule like voice his frustrations like that? About officiating or different things in regards to like standing up for his players?
No, I can't say that I have like a great gauge of it. I mean, he's sort of voiced frustration in the sense that he doesn't always understand some of the like you think after the Minnesota game, but it was a different kind of, way of voicing it. This was just pure kind of just getting it off the chest, letting it be known. Doing it in a way that he feels like is constructive, rather than just doing it in the way that I would, which would just be pure tear everything down, burn it to the ground, Sherman through Georgia, that kind of thing. Like that's how I would be. Turns out other people are more diplomatic, and that's why they get things done.
And that's why you write.
Yeah.
I just like that we already got our Civil War reference in, because we got Revolutionary War last time. We got our Civil War reference in this time.
Just wait till I bust out the Rough Riders and the Spanish-American War on you.
Yeah, that would be insane. That would be insane.
We our guy Mike J. Schaefer covers Husker football and local historian. We appreciate that about Schaefer.
Museum operator.
I was gonna say, no, you do kind of have the Civil War era beard there, so we're good. We got you're playing the part.
I had a chin strap in college for like a weekend, and I realized just how horrible that was. Like the Abe Lincoln style beard.
I would say, was it like the thick? It was like the thick chin strap, or was it like the pencil line?
Not one of those weak, like, oh look, I can just put a like caterpillar across my face all the way around.
Listen, guys, we can stop talking about me. Like, it's cool.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Shape. I had the pencil line, the beard, like the chin strap, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite facial hairs I've ever done.
It seems like such a waste, though, because you can grow such a glorious beard. Why would you want to hide that?
Well, it was the early 2000s. Yeah. I had the puka shells. I was listening to Creed, although not a lot has changed there. It just felt like the thing. Honestly, it was a Kevin Garnett thing. Kevin Garnett had one, and I thought it looked super cool. And I was like, you know what? I want the Kevin Garnett.
And you're thinking I'm only a few years away from wearing Afflicted and Tap Out shirts. So, we're just
thankfully I averted that part of the trends.
You came to the fork in the road and you chose the opposite.
I exited the freeway before I got to Affliction and bedazzled jeans. So
gotcha.
We're glad we did that there. Shafe, we will talk about Nebraska football at some point. The thing that I keep coming back to this week is and listen, I'm not unique in this, is that quarterback position with Heinrich Haarberg. And I'm really struggling to understand, and so maybe you can help me here. I'm really struggling to understand the mentality of continuing to put Heinrich Haarberg out there as it seems like the turnovers in this and the decision making is regressing rather than progressing. First of all, am I right in that assessment? And secondly, how do you think that kind of works with the dynamic of the rest of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think my guess is, I shouldn't say I think, because well, I guess it is. I certainly don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but my feeling is probably inside those walls, they are understanding that with Heinrich Haarberg, it's basically going to be betting on trying to get as many big plays, if not maybe one more big play than you have turnover. Like, it's a very thin margin game. And my guess is, with as much as they've been able to watch practice over the last month, I would think the guys on the team probably have as good of an indication throughout practice as to why Haarberg is getting all of these opportunities relative to the other two guys in the room. And I think some of it is they really, until Saturday, hadn't had a loss with Haarberg as their starting quarterback where it would be unexpected, or, like the Michigan loss was a Michigan loss, but I don't think people really put that on him. And so it's harder probably internally to make those sort of changes as you keep winning, but it doesn't really feel like they have another option. Like, I don't know that Jeff Sims completely burned the option with fumbling on his one opportunity against Purdue, but it just doesn't feel like that's really going to be a thing they're going to do in these final 3 games, barring injury. And then I don't think Chubba Purdy's an option at all. Like, if he was, I think we would have probably seen him at this point. And so I think this is what they have. I think this is who they are. And because of that, you're going to have to just keep moving forward with Haarberg, and you have to figure out how can you mitigate and work around these mistakes. How can you make it easier for him? I don't know how you guys feel about this. I feel like you can see him think in real time as you're watching these games, and there's just so much information and he's not processing it.
Right.
It's a lot like Adrian Martinez early sophomore year, 2019, where you're like, what happened to the guy that was just running around making plays? Well, that guy suddenly he has a lot more information he's thinking about. He's no longer thinking like, oh, this is a great opportunity. Let's see what happens here. It's, no, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. This has to be here. And he's not processing fast enough. And then you combine that with mechanics that are flawed, so the ball is high a lot. Like, it just does not allow for strong quarterback play. But the problem is, I don't know that you can really remove him because I think it hurts your offense too much. Like, I don't know that you're going to be able to run even the belly option passes with Jeff Sims. I don't know that you're going to be able to have any threat of a quarterback run game with Chubba Purdy. So that because of all of these things, it just feels like for them to kind of survive over however many games they have left for 2023, they have to just sort of get by with Haarberg. Like, that's just how it feels to me. It's not probably ideal by any sense, but that is sort of where they're at, and that is, I think, the end game for them to just try to get through the season.
Schaefer, so I understand all of those points you just made. If those things are true, which I think they very well could be, I really don't understand, especially in light of the, hey, you have to mitigate some of the places you're putting the ball at risk with Haarberg. I really don't understand throwing the ball 30 times in a game that they were in. I mean, it was tied at halftime, right? Like, I don't know why. Like, does that make sense? Like, that's where I have a frustration. It's like, hey, if Haarberg's the guy and you know his limitations, then why put him in situations where he's going to struggle?
I assume it has to do with the looks they're getting on the field. Like, they have one-on-one opportunities. My frustration is I want to see more of those sort of jump ball throws to Malachi Coleman. Like, I can live with Heinrich Haarberg being potentially turnover prone if it's chasing high upside plays like that when you have numbers in your favor and you're allowing a guy like Malachi Coleman to go make a play. I have a tougher time with the interceptions when he's just drifting aimlessly to the right, because that's kind of what's happened to him. Like, he starts in the pocket and then he just starts drifting towards the sidelines, and then it's just sort of unleashed with no real feel or touch in the air. I mean, The one that got called back because of the holding penalty, I mean, that's about as bad of an interception as you can throw. I mean, that reminded me a lot, and going back to Adrian 2019, that reminded me a lot of the one that got him benched that brought Luke McCaffrey on the field against Northwestern, where he's just floating that thing up in the middle of the field, never saw the safety, didn't read the defense, picked a guy out and threw it with no mechanics, no feet behind him, any of that. So I can live with more, or I can live with the regression if it's chasing the upside. It's when it's just poor reads of the field. Like it's harder for me to live with that. And then the drifting, I don't know, maybe I'm just inventing this in my head, but it just feels like anytime he's in a drop back situation and the pocket isn't clean, he just sort of slides to the right and just keeps falling towards the sidelines, and his feet are never set. There's no timing on any throws. Like it becomes then a improv type play. And frankly, for Heinrich Harburg, an improv play that results in him throwing has not gone well for Nebraska. Like it either needs to be on time in the pocket or a scheduled type of rollout, and then the ball comes out right away. But if the play breaks down and he just has to scramble and chuck it, I don't really recall Nebraska having a lot of success with that either. So to me, if it's like if the play breaks down, they need to be coaching him, just try to get what you can with your legs, because that's sometimes where the danger really seems to come with his arm. When he's on scheduled throws, they've been a little bit better. Not a lot, but a little bit better. It's when he starts drifting and then trying to make a play with his arm, that's when I think things have fallen apart to me.
Schaefer, and I'm with these points because I think decision making was rough. I think the throws were rough, but in terms of how that game was overall played by the team, do you think Harburg is taking too much of the blame, or too much? We're criticizing him too much for his gameplay when all three phases of the game weren't great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I regard Harburg as the single thing that I walked out of that game most disappointed in. For me, it was the overall strategy with what you're doing with your punt return game. I mean, you gave away field position in a horrific fashion throughout that game because you decided, hey, we got Billy Kemp. All that matters to us is to catch the ball. Doesn't need to be a threat to run. Michigan State figures that out. And here's the other key point. They have a real Big Ten punter. Brian Buschini, we need to see if you can be a real Big Ten punter again, because this year, when Nebraska's needed it, hasn't been. I mean, you have to have a guy that can flip a field, and the best they could get on Saturday was a 45-yard kick. And we know Brian Buschini has a big leg. We've seen it. I think he has some 70-yarder in his time here at Nebraska. But it can't just be occasionally. They need more consistency in special teams. I mean, it really felt like all three phases took turns failing on Saturday for various reasons. And it really felt like the special teams gave away critical field position. When we're talking about Nebraska struggling to move the ball, but they're able to get you 30, 40 yards, and that puts it in range of Tristan Alvano and his big leg, I would rather go down swinging with Tristan Alvano attempting a 50-some-yard field goal than having to watch Brian Buschini kick, a 43-yard punt that doesn't even flip the field because you started the drive at the 5-yard line inexplicably because your punt returner, who's not even a threat to return it, is catching the ball inside the 10. Like there's so much that went wrong in the third phase that I look at that as stuff that you can change. You have Heinrich Harburg through a series of circumstances that are unfortunate, that you're here, but you have to figure that out. And you've had weeks to figure that out. Installing Billy Kemp to do nothing on your punt returns, that was a critical coaching decision, and maybe one of the most flawed ones we've seen for Matt Rule so far this year.
Yeah, he mentioned that he talked to Ethan Nation after the game and said, hey, I should have given you an opportunity earlier than I did.
Well, it's inexplicable because you put Ethan Nation in when you need a spark, right? Like they very clearly put him in there. Well, that's also the most critical time you need the ball.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't even make sense that when he got put in, it was when the one that you definitely have to get the ball there. So it's like, if you're comfortable putting him in that situation, they should have been comfortable starting him and seeing what he could do there. And I don't think you end up with as much field position loss if you have Ethan Nation relative to Billy Kemp on Saturday. Does it flip the game? I don't know. But I really do think it hurt them substantially on Saturday.
Well, and we are talking about a 3-point game here. So it's feasible that these little things did swing the outcome because they were giving away chunks of yards.
Yeah, it wasn't just 10 yards. It was 20, 25 at points.
The whole second half, Michigan State just got to sit in Nebraska's field, whether, it was on defense or on offense, because Buschini couldn't flip it. Nebraska couldn't sustain drives. Like, it was a nightmare quarter for Nebraska in the third quarter because it just allowed Michigan State to dictate the entire terms. That's probably the first time, besides the Michigan game, really, even Colorado struggled to sort of dictate to Nebraska until they pulled away in the end. Mm-hmm. Like, Michigan State kind of controlled that game in a way that Nebraska had largely done to other teams. And so I think that's why also Saturday felt so flat. Like, we're not used to seeing Nebraska just sort of being told, here's where you're going to be. Good luck getting out of it.
Schaefer, one of the areas that we hadn't really discussed yet is the defense. And I think we largely all sort of give them a pass because of how good they've been this year. But I thought on Saturday, and Coach Rule brought up, even against Purdue, he thought there was some mistakes there. But how much do you think I'll call it flatness of the defense was to do with injuries, guys like Prince Will not being out? I believe Omar Brown was out as well. And then you lose Malcolm Hartzog at one point in that game. How much of it do you think it had to do with injuries, and how much of it had to do with just sort of the mentality and that edge not really being there for some reason?
Yeah, I felt like they come out with a little bit of a malaise. I think that probably had as much to do with anything. I mean, that first drive was really kind of Michigan State's best drive of the day. They took advantage of a couple busts for Nebraska. They were able to kind of control the line of scrimmage early in the game. And then Nebraska's defense fought their way back into that game. I think there's a noticeable shift in how they played later relative to how they played early on. But I think a lot of it was Michigan State came out and just wanted it more than Nebraska on Saturday. I mean, we make a lot about what the record is and everything else. They have players too. Alante Brown brought an emotional connection to the game. Harlan Bennett searching for his first win. They don't want to quit on their season, and it's senior day in East Lansing. They brought their own juice, and Nebraska didn't match it early on. And then the other thing that's really hard is, for as much as we like this Nebraska's defense, and as well as they played in that stretch against Illinois and Northwestern and Purdue, they are not a big play defense. They're simply not. Like, they did not come up with big plays on Saturday. They did not translate their ability to play defense into helping the offense score, put up points. They don't have big plays coming from special teams. They didn't have big plays coming from their defense. They pretty much only had big plays coming from Heinrich Harburg's legs and a couple throws. I mean, that was a thing. And they're a big, like, it's weird because you think of them as being more conservative because of how many points they put up and the way their defense plays. Nebraska is a big play team. They need big plays because they can't sustain drives. They're too flawed and too, beat up on offense to have 5 scoring drives and a half. They have to have a giant chunk play to help set things up. And sometimes that needs to come from defense. And they didn't really have it ever on Saturday. Tommy Hill had the best opportunity right at the beginning of the game. He had a nice pass breakup. That's where you wish that could have been a pick six. That would have set a tone immediately that could have just buried Michigan State. But that's the difference between Nebraska being an all-world defense or a great defense to just being what they are. And that's really, really solid. That's going to give everybody a tough game and give you a chance to win. But you can't just rely on them to go out there and win you games. They needed help on Saturday, and they didn't get picked up by Nebraska's offense.
Schaefer, let's turn the attention to Maryland now. Top 4 offense in the Big Ten, second best offense Nebraska has seen this season. Really good quarterback that can make you pay. What do you think the Huskers need to do a better job of when it comes to stopping those chunk plays that Michigan State put together that really hurt this Husker team last weekend?
Well, we'll start with this. I expect that they're going to come out and play a little bit hair on fire on Saturday. I think that Matt Rule will spend the week motivating and getting those guys ready to get the taste of last Saturday out of their mouth. So I think part of it is just going to be the effort. And then I am fascinated. This feels like 100% a Tony White game because you're not going to worry as much about what Maryland's going to do running the football. You're going to try to figure out, all right, the weakness of our team is probably in the pass defense. Teams have been able to take advantage of how soft our coverage is at times. This is a veteran quarterback. How can we confuse him? What looks can we give him? What has worked on film from other teams? When he went to Iowa and was absolutely on fire last year and they picked him off 5 times, what was the difference in that game? What can he see? What are his blind spots? And I feel really good about Tony White being able to do that. I feel good about Nebraska coming up with a game plan that allows them to challenge Maryland and force Maryland to drive the field rather than just take giant chunks and do it that way. And I think because of that, Maryland is also a team that they can get out of sync. They can turn it over. They're kind of a soft team. If Nebraska can come at them hard, if you have Prince Will back, if Cam Lenhart's playing well, James Williams on the outside, it's wild. In November, these are the three names I'm highlighting as important defensive players. I'm hearing myself saying it, and it's cracking me up. But those are the guys that I think are going to be huge on Saturday. I mean, they're going to have opportunities to pressure Taulia. They're going to have opportunities to get after the quarterback. They're going to have opportunities to be in his face. And it starts with those three guys and with Tony White coming up with something creative and the rest of the team rallying behind it. I like sort of how this set up in a weird way. I think Nebraska will come in with some edge and some anger having lost on Saturday, and I think that helps them. But they're going to be in a fight. This is going to be a game that's going to come down to the fourth quarter. I would be surprised if either team gets to run away with it. And that's where, Nebraska has not won a lot of fourth quarters because they haven't been good enough a lot of times. They're either been up by enough that they hold on, or they, just like we saw last week, they weren't able to get it done. So I'm very fascinated. I don't know right now how I feel who's going to win this game, but I think it's going to be close. And I think we're going to get a much better Nebraska effort on Saturday.
Schaefer,
I'm done. Let's go.
Schaefer, we got about a minute left here. Do you think Nebraska is competent enough on offense to take advantage of what is not a very good Maryland defense?
I think if they are able to find ways to force Maryland to not be able to sit an extra safety on Heinrich Haarberg, or if they can use Haarberg as a decoy and have some success that way, yes. I also think this is a game where a guy like Josh Fleeks could hit one of those big plays where his speed is such an asset. I mean, that turn he made on the down by the goal line, by the way, that was a really nice cut to get away from the edge of the field. I mean, I've been sort of kind of wanting to see him get a couple more opportunities, but it's hard because everything's a challenge. You can't just throw a tunnel screen to him because Nebraska's not blocking that well. You can't just throw a middle screen to him because who the hell knows what sort of offensive line formation you're even going to get there. So a lot of it is you're a little bit challenged in what you can do, but I think they do have some playmakers, Malachi, Jalen Lloyd, Josh Fleeks. Those guys, maybe if you get two of them to have giant plays for you, it could help, because I don't know that Heinrich Haarberg's going to be able to run for 200 yards. And
Mike
you're going
Schaefer,
to need offense somewhere.
We appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Mike.
We will be